the audio and the video to go on live on our web stream. Those of you watching online, you're you probably made it. We're good. You probably made a choice because of how miserable the air is outside. You said, you know what, I'm going to stay safe in my own home. That's okay. You get to pray from the comfort of your home. So we're all going to wave. We're going to wave to the people who are watching online. Shabbat shalom. We're going to start off on page 3 of the prayer book. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tovu manayim, shevet achim gam yachad.
Looks like the rabbi is having some difficulties. I think let's just all hang tight.
Viva Arvi Traman Vinase, Vitartar, Vitale, Vitalo, Shmedi Kudisha, Rehu, Le Mamiko, Berhata Beshirata, Tush Behata Nehemata, Damiram Yama, Vineru.
Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Barechu et Adonai Hamivorach. Baruch Adonai Hamivorach le'olam va'ed. Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. You may be seated. Let's continue on page 28. Peter Cohn is going to lead us in our next prayers.
Blessed are you, Adonai. Your great name fills the universe with majestic might. Your word creates twilight and dusk as your wisdom opens the gates of night. Your discernment separates the changing seasons and causes the passage of time. The stars, arrayed across the sky, reveal your design. You roll out the cycle of darkness and light, shaping day and night. You sweep away day and carry the world into nightfall, setting day apart from nighttime. You are God of all we can perceive and all that is beyond our perception. Living eternal God, be our sovereign to the end of time. Baruch atah Adonai, Amariv Aravim. Blessed are you, Adonai, creator of twilight and dusk. Page 30, love beyond all space and time. Your love enfolds your people, Yisrael. We receive it in your teaching, your gift of Torah, sacred obligations, discipline, and law. So let us speak these teachings when we lie down and rise up, and find joy forever in your Torah and mitzvot. They are the very essence of our life, ours to ponder and study all our days. May we never lose or be unworthy of your love. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael, for you are blessed, the one who loves your people, Yisrael.
Page 32. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kivod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. We're going to read an English setting for Ve'ahavta on page 35. Mark Weinstein is going to lead us in our next prayer.
You shall love the ones who are close with all your heart, with all your spirit, with all your strength. Remember these words, inscribe them on your heart. Love them when they struggle, when they sadden and disappoint you. Love them when they fail. See the good within them, even when they can't. Look at them and listen, even when it's hard. Be grateful for their guidance, even their reproof, when they save you from yourself. Love them when they give you joy, and love them when they don't. When you lie down, let go of anger. When you rise up at dawn, begin again. Praise them for their deeds at home. Speak to them in public with respect. Bind yourself to the ones you love with promises kept and vows fulfilled. Open to them the gates of your heart, the doorway of your soul, and let them know you. So shall the ones you cherish feel your love, your presence, and your care.
Continue with Micha Mocha, page 40. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Micha mocha pa'eli madona. Micha mocha nedar ba'kodesh. Micha mocha pa'eli madona. Micha mocha nedar ba'kodesh. Nora tehilo, o sefele. Nora tehilo, o sefele. Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. Malchutecha ra'u v'anecha, okei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam. Ze'eliyanu ve'ameru, Ze'eliyanu ve'ameru, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Page 42. Liz Suffolk's going to be.
I knew that. Make sure I can get this out without ripping my earring out. Okay, can't. Let us all sleep with peace, Adonai, and awaken us to our life when we rise. With power sublime, spread over us your shelter of shalom. And through your wisdom, restore us, make us whole. Let your name proclaim your presence in our lives. Be our shield, make us stronger than the enemies we face, illness and war, famine and sorrow, and stronger than the enemies in our heart, wickedness and sin. Carry us to safety as on wings, for you are the monarch of grace, the sovereign of compassion. You are the one who cares for us and sets us free. Watch over us, we who go forth to life. Watch over us, that we may come home in peace, now until the end of time. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukkot shalom aleinu, ve'akol amo Yisrael, ve'yal Yerushalayim. Blessed One, you spread over us the canopy of peace, a shelter of shalom over all Israel, your people, and Jerusalem.
Page 46. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et haShabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם, ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני Shavat vayinafaj. Shavat, Shavat vayinafaj. Shavat, Shavat vayinafaj. This prayer book is wonderfully creative, and it offers all kinds of alternatives to the traditional text. One of the things that, if you read the introduction to the Amidah that they've placed in this prayer book, you'll see is they have adapted a Sephardic custom of reading certain psalms every day during the month of Elul. These psalms are supposed to get us warmed up to the high holy days, get us prepared for the season of repentance. And what this prayer book has done is it has excerpted from some of these psalms and put a brief quote from each of the psalms lined up with one of the prayers of the Amidah. There's 7 prayers of the Amidah. There's 7 quotes from the psalms that are lined up with each prayer. And the way it's been edited, the psalms are being understood as if they are comments on those particular prayers. And so Joanne Simon's going to read to us those particular quotes from the Psalms. Instead of the traditional Amidah, we're going to read the Psalms that this prayer book has attached to each of the prayers of the Amidah. What we're going to do is we're just going to stand for the introduction to the Amidah in a moment, and then we'll all be seated during the reading of these selections from Psalms. So before we do that, I would like to invite you to turn to page 48. No, you're fine. You're in the right spot. On deck, as they say. Jacob came upon the place and stopped there for the night, for the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of that place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven. Jacob's dream is ours. Our bodies dwell on the earth, but our souls yearn to reach the heavens. Unless we aspire to the utmost, we shrink to inferiority. Prayer is our attachment to the utmost. I invite you to rise. Ana na 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 Adonai. Ana na 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 Sfatai Tiftach. Ana na 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 Ufi Yagi. Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha. Ana na 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 Adonai. Adonai na 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 Sfatai Tiftach. Adonai na 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 Ufi Yagi. Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha. You may be seated.
Page 51. These are the Kavanah. The first is what binds us to the past. Your faithfulness, a wondrous thing to behold. Your awe, who can grasp it. They who choose your path, whose lives rest on goodness, their children will inherit the land. Blessed is the one who finds forgiveness, whose misdeeds are overcome. Page 53. What gives us strength? Create for me a pure heart. Renew
within me
consistency
and
calm. Respond. Answer us with justice and awe, God of our salvation. You are the source of trust from the farthest ends of the earth to its most distant seas. Page 55. What leads us to holiness? Number 1. Is it not your will to bring us back to life again? That through you we may find happiness. When love and truth touch, justice and peace will kiss. Page 57. What leads us to holiness 2? A year of your goodness, your crowning gift,
Your paths grow lush with
with
oil,
oil, drop by drop. Pastures for grazing thrive in the wilderness, and the hills are encircled with joy. Flocks of sheep clothe spacious fields, and the valleys wear garments of grain. Filled to bursting, they shout, they praise, an exulted song of delight. Now we jump to page 63. What inspires our devotion? Bring joy to my life of service when I turn to you for purpose and hope. God, teach me your path. Your truth will guide my steps. Point my heart toward awe, your name the center of my devotion. And page 67. What fills us with gratitude? You are my home, my shelter. You soothe my distress. You embrace me with songs of deliverance. Adonai, my link to eternity, open my lips. Help me in my struggle to praise you.
Thank you, Julia. Page 70. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Let's take a moment for silent prayer. At this time, we ask for healing for members of our congregation and their loved ones who are ill. If you are praying for healing of body or healing of spirit for a loved one, I invite you to recite that person's name out loud as my eyes pass yours. To those whose names we have said out loud, we add those whom we hold in our hearts. We say, Baruch atah Adonai, Rofei HaCholim. We praise you, God, the source of healing. And let us say, Amen. You can find Misha Berach on page 77. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. The incredible smoke that we are experiencing, of course, leads us to concern about the devastating fires, which in turn are themselves exacerbated by yet another severe drought. It turns out that rain just happens to be exactly the subject of this week's Torah portion. Right, Kate? Last verse in your reading. Rain. Yeah, give us some rain. This Torah portion is somewhat similar, in fact, to my high school driver's ed class. After bar bat mitzvah, the next big milestone in a young adult's life is, of course, getting their driver's license. And that's a tremendous responsibility, but also a privilege, not entirely unlike becoming a bat mitzvah. How my high school could take such an exciting moment in my life, filled with such awesome possibility, and turn it into such a dull and boring class, I still cannot fathom. But driver's ed had one memorable component, and it wasn't the hokey simulators that we used to drive. Did you learn on a simulator? I presume those don't exist anymore. I don't know. The most memorable segment of the curriculum was the car crash movie. There was always a terrible movie depicting the most gruesome devastation that would happen if you did not obey all the laws that your driver's ed teacher was telling you. Now, the fact that the movie was so hideous and often horribly melodramatic does not mean that such awful tragedies were not real. Of course they were real, and the whole point of those films was to scare the living daylights out of you before you ever got behind the wheel of a car. And you may not have wanted to watch the stuff, but then again, you did know that there was some truth in it, and that if you were thinking straight, you really should drive sensibly, obey the speed limits, fasten your seatbelt, never drink and drive, and always, always stop at the railroad crossing. Well, this week's Torah portion is like driver's ed. It is all about blessings and curses. Moses has gathered the Israelites for a final run-through of all the laws they should observe once they enter the land of Israel. He tells them how blessed they will be if they follow the laws which God has enjoined upon them. He goes on to say, at exceedingly gruesome length, which thankfully Kate will not be reading tomorrow, what curses will befall them if they do not obey God's laws. It is a peculiarity of the book of Deuteronomy that it presents this particular theology about blessings and curses. The rest of the Torah presents laws, but only in Deuteronomy are we told what the rewards and punishments for those laws are. Deuteronomy has a unique place in the Torah in this regard. It has more theology, that is, statements about God and how God operates, than the other 4 books of the Torah. The rest of the Torah has stories about God and lots of laws, but Deuteronomy really preaches a sermon. If you do X, then God will do Y. And if you don't do X, then God is going to do Z, as in zap you. The classic example of this theology is found in the opening of chapter 28 of Deuteronomy. It says, now, if you obey the eternal your God to observe faithfully all God's commandments, and then it goes on to say, the Eternal will, quote, provide rain for your land in its season. Deuteronomy portrays God operating in a kind of mechanistic way. If you are faithful to the covenant, then God will cause the rain to fall. And not just any rain, but rain in its season. Because in Israel, there are basically 2 seasons, wet and dry, which is very similar to where I used to live in Maine, which also has only 2 seasons, snow season and road repair. Now, if you don't get enough rain in the wet season, then there won't be enough water for your crops to grow in the dry season. And if you get too much rain in the dry season, your crops will rot. So rain in its season is a critical blessing. Indeed, rain when it is not in its season can be a curse. With all the advances of civilization, the devastating power of the forces of nature is no less real to us than it was to our ancestors. Rather than think of their hopes for rain in its season as some kind of primitive wish out of an agrarian society, we realize that the prayer for nature to be kind is as elemental and natural to us as it was to them. Just think of how much we invest ourselves in the hope for good weather, say, for example, at your niece's outdoor wedding. Multiply that by the hopes of every farmer, of a city that has been deluged, of an entire nation or continent, and we could begin to see why ancient Israel relied on a God who would bring rain in its season. But ever since ancient times, people have had questions about these verses. Namely, why is it that when people are good, they don't always get rewarded with blessings the way it says they will in Deuteronomy? And why is it that when people are wicked, they don't always get punished with Deuteronomy's curses? The way Deuteronomy presents it, it is supposed to be an automatic thing. Take, for example, the response of Maimonides, the 12th century Jewish philosopher. When Maimonides read this verse, if you obey the Lord your God, then the Lord will bring rain for your land in its season, he simply could not reconcile himself to that belief. It just doesn't happen that way, he said. God doesn't actually turn on the water faucet in response to human loyalty and cause drought when humans are wicked. To believe that God acts that way is to believe in a God that controls and manipulates nature, like keeping a scorecard of the human batting average. Maimonides understood that nature follows its own laws, and those laws are not mechanically altered as a function of human morality. To think otherwise would be to suggest that God decides when things have gotten so bad that it's time for a little drought or an earthquake or a fire. Maimonides was not the first to suggest that the theology presented in Deuteronomy ought not to be taken literally. The book of Job is all about unwarranted human suffering and Job's inability to reconcile his own misfortune with the Deuteronomic promise that the faithful will be rewarded. Nor did either Job or Maimonides believe that the faithful would get their compensation in the world to come or some afterlife. Life is filled with rain that doesn't come or that arrives when it is not in season. And if that is so, then why does the Torah make it seem that God is in control? Maimonides suggested that the Torah speaks that way not as an actual description of God, but because that is how all ancient peoples used to think their gods operated. It would have been impossible to convince ancient Israel that their God was worth their loyalty unless they thought he was capable of the same meteorological might as any pagan deity. And it's true that all ancient peoples believed that their gods controlled the forces of nature, but they also believed that their gods were capricious. Why does the Babylonian god Enlil bring about a flood on the earth? Because humans were being too noisy and were disturbing his rest. Enlil says to the council of gods, "Oppressive has become the clamor of mankind. By their uproar, they prevent sleep." Basically, other ancient peoples believed that the forces that controlled nature were unreliable, even fickle. The best you could hope to do was appease them, perhaps with regular sacrifices of your flock or produce. But ancient Israel presented a different view, not of God's control of nature, a different view of God's reliability, God's constancy. The laws that humanity must follow were all spelled out. They are open and available for all to see, and Deuteronomy is its text. God is not the fickle finger of fate, but the one who upholds his end of the covenant so long as we uphold ours. It is, in fact, the triumph of law and of a society ruled by law that characterizes Deuteronomy. No longer was God thought of as just another big cosmic bully, but rather as the force which expects Israel to abide by a standard of justice that can be communicated in the form of law. Israel democratized God's expectations and made them a matter of public record. That does not solve the problem that God does not actually follow through with the blessings and curses as promised, an observation noted by Job and Maimonides, but it helps us understand the point of the passage. It is not about the blessings and the curses at all. That part is there because all ancient driver's ed courses had their obligatory crash and burn movie. Indeed, while Deuteronomy solves one problem for its readers, namely that our God is not capricious, it poses another problem, that the righteous sometimes suffer and the wicked sometimes prosper. Deuteronomy is, in the final analysis, not a book about how God operates. It is not Poor Richard's Almanac telling us how to predict the rain. Indeed, it cannot help us solve the problem of evil. What it is a book about how we are supposed to operate. It gives us the basics that you know are true, like fastening your seatbelt and stopping at the railroad tracks. The thing you may remember is the scary movie, but you know that the really important stuff is the guidance it offers us in the construction of a just society. Like Maimonides, I have learned to read past the verses that I cannot accept, particularly that God will bring rain in its season. But I am inspired by Deuteronomy's vision that the world should not be governed by caprice, its vision that justice is achievable through rules that govern our duties toward one another. Our society would benefit from a little less of those who believe that God is pulling the strings of nature, and a little more of those who believe that a nation's laws are the vehicle that gets us on the road to justice. And to understand that lesson, we'll all have to go back to the Torah's course in driver's ed. Well, we've got some upcoming events, just a few things happening in the congregation in coming days. Liz Suffet is going to tell us what's coming up.
Mask off without pulling my ear. Shabbat Shalom. I'm Liz Suffet, VP for Adult Programs and Education. Thank you, Rabbi Milder, for making us remember when we were young, and for leading us in worship, and also thanks to the congregants who helped lead the service. I would also like to thank our tech menches for doing all the behind-scenes work for this service to be live streamed. Tomorrow morning, Torah Study returns to its Saturday morning schedule and will take place online at 9 a.m. The link will be on our website. At 10:30, join us in our Shabbat morning service here in the air-conditioned sanctuary, or through our live service. The service tomorrow will be led in great part by our bat mitzvah, Kate Wagner. Mazel tov. Religious School reopens live in person this Sunday. It is not too late to register. Speaking of registering, membership renewal season is in full swing. Please consider what you can pledge and get your forms filled out. Also, speaking of registration, after tons of hard work, Skylar Cohen has brought forth our High Holidays ticketing registration. We certainly plan to hold services in person, but all services will also be live streamed if you're not yet comfortable being with us in the building. It is really important to note that our COVID safety protocols mean that we will have to limit capacity on all services and must require registration and ticketing. Please look for today's email after Shabbat that provides all the pertinent links and instructions. We will also be looking for people to help with ushering. See me for details. Adult education classes are open for registration as well. This fall, Rabbi Milder will lead us through the literary passages of Judaism through the great books of our people. And Janet Ellis Milder will be leading, teaching adult Hebrew from the heart, learning the prayers from our prayer book and the prayers of our day-to-day lives, not only reading, but understanding them. Teen programming starts off with an art class taught by Rhonda Chase, who recently beautifully painted a utility box in Dublin with blue skies, cherry blossoms, and birds. It's really pretty. Other activities to look forward to. This weekend, Under 110, which is part of the CCJCC, is streaming a wonderful family film, Abu Lele. The theme of forgiveness for this season provides the basis of a story of a young boy dealing with upheaval in his family. The events committee is putting together a jewelry swap. Update your jewelry wardrobe by trading some of yours with some of your friends. Information is in the Once Round. A special initiative to teach others about anti-Semitism through our own stories and video is called Here I Am. Details again in the Once Round article. And by the way, this past week, there was a very interesting talk by a gentleman named Basim Aid on Palestinian and Israeli politics in the current situations. I highly recommend looking for the recording on the Under 110 site. I learned a lot and gained some new insights. Indeed, all details for this and much more on our website and Once Around. Shabbat Shalom.
We continue now on page 78 with Aleinu. I invite you to rise as you are able. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latei kedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu kemishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech, Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Page 80. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad Ushemo, Ushemo, Ushemo Echad. You may be seated. Page 85. Sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me. And may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea. But such a tide as moving seems asleep, too full for sound and foam, when that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark. And may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out our bourne of time and place the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. Judaism teaches us the sacred duty of memory. On this Shabbat, we remember those whose yahrzeit occurred during the past week. I invite those who are observing yahrzeit for the following to rise as I recite their names. We observe yahrzeit for Rose Turif Cohen, Lena Cohn, Diane Glatt, Donald Luce, Elizabeth Pavel, Leon Schwartz, Esther Saruya, Louis Spatz, Alice Suffet, Tilly Swart, Alvin Weinstein. And I invite all those who are observing the first year of mourning to rise at this time. Zichronam Livracha, may the memories of the righteous be a blessing. Please join with me in Mourner's Kaddish on page 86, and please rise. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah ba'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chai echon u'v'yom echon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yit hadar, v'yit alev, v'yit halal, shemed kudisha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechmata. Da'amiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. V'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Kol Yoshvei Tevel, v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. Let us say together, amen. You may be seated. And following our closing song, we're going to join together with Kate in a Kiddush and Motzi, so just stick around. If you want to go grab those cups, you could do that and pass them around while we're doing our closing song. So just for your reference, the white cups are grape juice and the red cups are wine. Staying with our prayer book for the month of Elul, of course, one of the famous texts of the High Holy Days is Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha. Turn us back to you, God. Renew us as we were before. And you could find the words on page, what is this? Page 92. Page 92. But the melody that I'm going to share with us is not one that is familiar from the High Holy Days. It is a much more contemporary melody that I enjoy a lot, and it has a tremendous beat. So it goes like this, and sing it a couple of times so you can pick it up. It's awfully easy. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha. Hashivenu v'nashua. Chadesh Yameinu. they're gonna get you a couple of euro. And, let's see, do I have a page number for this? And let's just see. Yes, page 12, page 12. And there we go. Thank you very much. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ava uvratzon hinchilanu v'zikaron le'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila l'mikra'i kodesh Zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim, kivanu v'acharta, v'otanu kidashta, kol hamim, v'shabbat kodshecha, v'yava uvratzon, hinchaltanu, baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh, Shabbat. L'chaim. And where's that challah? Bring that challah up here. Will you take the, well, I'll take the cover off. You pick up the challah, okay? There we go. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam motzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom. You take a piece of that and give the rest of them around here.